Welcome to the Make Work Not Suck podcast.
All right, Ryan, I've got a hypothetical, not hypothetical situation for you. All right. Imagine that you have been told that your federal remote job is over and you've got to go back to the office or else. And you fill in the blanks there. One of the bold moves being proposed by Elon and the Department of Government Efficiency. This is their plan to streamline government jobs. But is it efficiency or is this just chaos? What do you think?
It's just chaos. it's efficiency through chaos. Is plain and simple.
So does that make it the red line or the green line?
You know, I think only time is going to tell if this is red or green. I think there's good intention from what they're trying to do. They're trying to fix years of governmental red line, but two red lines don't make a green. So the real question is, are they trying to fix a red line with more redlining?
Mm-hmm.
So what I find interesting with this move, they're wanting to what? They're wanting to reduce the government workforce by 75%. Is that correct? Yeah, we want to reduce the government workforce by 75% and cut $2 trillion from the federal budget. And their means of doing this to drive efficiency is to do all government employees back in the office or else, right?
Right.
So the real question is what impact is this going to have? Is this going to Are there good, talented government workers that we're going to lose because they're not going to be willing to relocate?
Or just commute, right? Like even if you're not having to relocate, you're just not willing to spend the time in the car.
I wonder how many government jobs the workforce is within the average commute distance of an office, or since COVID, has many of the jobs been allowed to be remote, which would cause complete disruption. Yeah, here it is. DOGE's broader mission is cut federal jobs by 75%, targeting inefficiencies and perceived redundancies. That is a lot of people. The government is one of the largest employers on the planet.
Yeah.
75%. That is a lot of that's a lot of displaced people. But how many people, if you force this mandate back to the office mandate, which doing this in the federal government isn't the first one. I mean, I think one that's commonly in the news often is JP Morgan Chase, Citibank. Those are the two big ones I'm more closer aware of.
Other tech firms, Amazon, I think, is toyed around with 3 days or something like that.
I get it where these big enterprises are doing it, and I think it's only natural the federal government follows suit. But is anybody willing to do it and enter DOGE? If you're trying to cut 75% of the workforce and you're trying to do it through this means of forcing people back in the office, are you cutting the right 75%?
Right. You're assuming that the 75% is either evenly distributed and it doesn't matter, or that you're just going to... that the people adding the most value are the people already coming to the office, and the people adding less than average value are the ones working from home. And that's a dangerous assumption. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying it's dangerous.
So are we actually getting productivity gains by forcing people out? That's the first question. Let's go with that one.
Maybe I'll take a slightly different angle on this. Like, let's say that you are Elon Musk and you are charged with radically improving the efficiency of the government. There's one path, the consultant path, right? Which is make everyone interview for their job. It sounds like an episode of, what was that movie, The Office Space, where it's like, what would you say you do here? And the guy's like, I talk to the customer so the engineers don't have to. I've got people skills. What's wrong with you? Can't you see I have people skills? Like, you could go through that process, right? That's going to take years. I mean, there's hundreds of thousands of government employees. And who are you going to hire to go through and make that decision of where you're going to cut 40, 50, 60% of the headcount? Like, it's going to take so long and it's going to cost so much money to pay consultants to do that. You're going to spend 2 years worth of payroll to the consultants to save payroll costs. So I don't think that's really a viable strategy. Now, I don't love the, back to the office mandate, but it is an interesting forcing function. So I'll give it interesting. I'm not going to call it effective. I'm not going to call it good. I'm just going to call it curious to basically say we're going to force everyone to come back to the office, and anyone who is unwilling to comply doesn't have a job anymore. But a lot of those government jobs have pensions. So I'm assuming there's a severance agreement. Like, what happens if somebody says, sorry, I can't, or I won't? Any idea what happens economically there?
Well, my guess is, and this is where it's going to get interesting. Actually, this is a total twist here. If you're employed by the U.S. government, which employs people in many states all around the country,
right?
Which state law do you have to comply with as an employer? Or does the U.S. government have its own set of employment laws at a federal level? That's an interesting question. I'm going to have to research that one. But I think if you're forcing people, if you're making a policy change, let's go private business right now. If you make a change right now to say, I want everybody back in the office, it is a mandate. It's not, you're not singling out a single group. You're not saying just this group of people, which could be considered discrimination or, some sort of loophole. When you're making a mass mandate like that, especially in an at-will environment, if you don't comply, then your position's eliminated. There's severance packages and things that can go along with it, maybe if you take it voluntarily, but if you don't comply with the rule, you're forfeiting your job. So there's nothing saying that you have to take a severance or you get pay or anything like that. I think on the other hand, from a pension standpoint, if a lot of those people have a pension, if you're stop paying those people, then they're not contributing. I actually think it probably lessens the pension burden because you don't have a lot of people expecting to get it. Like if there really is that much inefficiency and we're not getting that much productivity out of all the people. I mean, there's 2.3 million civilians employed by the U.S. government. That's non-military personnel, 2.3 million people. I mean, think about the cut of that. They want to cut 1.7 million jobs out of the U.S. government.
Wow. That is
so
a staggering number.
If you stop paying pension on 1.7 million people, I think it becomes a rounding error on the budgeting in future years.
Well, even just the payroll costs of that, like that's unbelievable. Now, I don't know if it adds up to 2 trillion or whatever the number is he's trying to hit, but good gosh, that's a lot of people.
It says as of, we're using ChatGPT here. So as of September 30th, 2023, the average annual salary of a U.S. federal civilian employee was $101,610, not including benefits. So if you take 1.7
and they've got awesome benefits, I'd go 30%.
Just payroll cost, if that's the average.
Okay.
Let's see. You're looking at what is that? That's 1,000 million. It's not 2 trillion. I'll tell you that much. It's 175 billion. So you're going to cut 175 billion out of and that's just payroll.
Right.
Payroll. Right. On one hand, making this change is going to save 175 out of 2 trillion. Like that's a good step, but there's still $1.8 trillion to go.
Right.
So we know this isn't the end all be all, but then let's get back to if the government is going to run lean and mean, it has to be the right people, right seats.
Right.
So then by making this mandate, and there are people that I know that are phenomenal workers for the government that are stationed in DC and live here in DFW.
Okay.
I think those people those are assets to the agencies they work for. And I think it would be a detriment to the agencies they work for if those people are no longer with the government. And I don't know if they're willing to relocate to their various,
departments,
corporate offices in DC, if you will.
One of the things I think you're potentially creating here is a brain drain, right? Like if word gets out that this is happening, the people with the most talent have the most options in general, right? Not always, but rule of thumb, the best people have the best options. The least qualified, least productive, your B and C players have the least options. So there's a talent war, whether the government wants to admit it or not. And if you're just going to somewhat arbitrarily threaten the jobs of 75% of your people, the ones that you're most likely to lose are the ones with the best options, which are the best people.
Oh yeah. Well, I think it comes back to, and we've seen this in. I'm going to use Citibank for example because they've got a big presence here in DFW. No,
Okay.
dozens of people that work there.
Hmm.
You know, the whole remote component came in for COVID, but
Right.
many of these people work for Citibank before COVID happened, and so they were in the
Hmm.
office, 5 days a week, and now Citibank
Yep.
I think has gone back to 3 days a week. It's in the mix of, well, you know what, it's better than five, or it's not nearly as bad as five. It's only three,
Right.
and I was already commuting at 5 days a week anyway. So the real
Right.
question is, how many people in the federal government are under those same kind of guidelines? They live within the range of a facility.
Hmm.
Not too far down the street from me is a big, the Southwest Regional FAA headquarters.
Okay.
So maybe those that work for the FAA don't need to relocate to, DC per se, but do they relocate to a regional office?
Yep.
Then it's down to, well, I'm back in the office, but is it geographically the right move? Because I'm filling a mandate of being in an office, but my peers are at other centers around the country.
Why do you think he's doing it, or
Yeah.
or threatening to do this?
I think it's the same way corporate's doing it. I think it's a means to weed people out. I think it's a. I mean, it's its intention, but what we don't know or what's too early to tell, is it going to be effective? Is this, if you're trying to cut 75% of the workforce, are you really going to get, or is this going to do like 5% of, is this going to cut 5% of the workforce? Is it going to cut 20, 30, 40%? I don't think we know. And I'm not even advocating, is it right or wrong, the right thing to do, the wrong thing to do. I'm just looking at the math and going, how does this play into it? And then when you get into the business side of it, I agree. There is something about having people back in the office. And we're seeing it in all kinds of businesses. There's a lot of
Yep.
companies that have gone full back in office and people are loving it. There are
Yep.
companies that have, nope, we're staying remote. We're going to stay remote. We're not bending on it. We're going to stay remote. And then you've got companies that are, we're going to regionalize. We're going to try to
Hmm.
put pockets of people together so we can get the collaboration, but we'll still be decentralized overall. And then you've got companies that are, we'll go hybrid, we'll have certain meetings. And I think it also goes back to the type of work too. If you're a more, knowledge worker where you're dependent on collaboration with other people, you're never going to beat the face-to-face meeting.
Right.
You're just way more productive when you get in a room to collaborate. At the
Yep.
same time, after you've done the collaboration and on the same page, I mean, you and I, we fly back and forth between Dallas and Atlanta to write on whiteboards that, we could do right there.
Right.
But there's something about being in that face-to-face, that collaboration.
It is
and then
significantly more effective to actually be physically in the room. And I can't explain why, but you're absolutely right.
well, there's something about breathing the same air. You're in the same environment. In a remote setting, at best you're using two senses, visual and audible, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whether you're in a room, you're using all five of your senses.
Yeah, it's true.
So there's more feeding the subconscious, there's more feeding the brain, there's more alignment, and then of course there's just little nuances, right? Like you're in a meeting with 20 people, you can't have side conversations in Zoom. You can't pass a little sticky note.
Right.
I mean, I guess you can in Slack or Teams or something like that, but it's harder to do those kind of things. It's harder to drive a more productive meeting. But just like you and I fly back and forth to Dallas and Atlanta, we also fly back home and then get the work done.
Yeah.
So just mandating people to be in the office is not enough to solve the problem. You can still have ineffective people in an office.
Yes, it's helpful, but it doesn't necessarily make unproductive employees magically productive. An interesting thought experiment is, what if this blows up on them? What if 95% of the people are like, sucks, but okay, I'll do it. And they don't get any decrease in headcount or a marginal decrease in headcount. I wonder what their move is after that. If they make this mandate and everyone says, sucks, but okay. And they're like, oh crap, they called my bluff. I was expecting half of you to resign and nobody resigned.
Well, I think it's a preemptive strike. I think it's a first attempt, right?
Sure.
There's other things like in here, like that says they want to eliminate the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau. I'll be honest, I don't really know what that bureau does. I bet I can make some assumptions based off what it's called, but I don't really know any policies or how it's enforced and stuff. I bet I could figure it out, right?
I was in banking when the CFPB was created, and it's basically the regulatory body that keeps banks from screwing people.
Yeah. So what's the plan for that? You want to eliminate that that agency, but
Right.
who's going to look out for the consumer or the average American person that's designed to protect if you get rid of that agency? I'm all for efficiencies, and I'm all for getting rid of redundancies. If there's another agency that has a very parallel and you're going to consolidate, I'm for that. Get rid of the redundant agency, which, that's another one of the items in here is reduce administrative cost, cut federal budget outlay, and then, remove duplication in agencies and conflicting, policy enforcement. Fine. That's efficiency gain. But even then, if you force all the people back to the office and you lose the good people you need to optimize that, are you going to make exceptions to the rule?
My biggest concern is that let's say they lose 50% of their people. The 50% that they lose is the best 50%. And the people that are left are the less qualified of the workforce. So you've got half the people, but only 25% of the capacity. That's a scary, scary thought, given how inefficient our government can be at sometimes. Elon Musk has done this kind of stuff before, right? He did return to office at Tesla and at Twitter. Do you know how those went?
I don't know. I think Tesla's still a little bit TBD, and I think they're still a little bit behind closed doors. I mean, Twitter's still a massive platform, and you hear all kinds of stuff all over the news. It's doing well. It's not doing well. They fired this whole group. They pulled this back in, and I think it's just too hard to tell heads or tails of Twitter to a degree. At the end of the day, I think you can say it's still a successful platform, even if everybody says they're jumping off of it. I don't think there's a lack of a market there.
Tesla's not a real fair comparison because a lot of the Tesla stuff is manufacturing. Like you have to be in the factory, or what do you do in here? Or you have to be in the field where you are in a showroom or working on a car, right? So there's less geographic flexibility with Tesla than there is with Twitter X.
Agree. You know what? The other thing too, and this is a difference between Twitter and Tesla and any other company. Those have a mission. I think those that stuck around with Twitter were given the opportunity. We're going to revolutionize this platform. We're going to remove all this crap from it. Whether you agree with it or disagree with it, again, I'm not picking a side here. He gave people a potential opportunity to be part of something that is change.
Right.
And so I think those that wanted to stay at Twitter, they're developers and people that left, either by choice or by not choice. But there are people that had the opportunity to stay and stayed. And I think it's because it gave them something greater for. You look at Tesla, same thing. What is Tesla doing? They're, rolling out this new AI component. They've got their cars. Their cars are insanely high in revolutionizing, auto tech.
Oh, I want the Tesla robot.
The Tesla robot, right? The power
I've
cells.
I've already sold it to my wife and said, "Hey, if you're tired of loading the dishwasher, let's buy one of these and it'll load the dishwasher for us." And she's like, "I'm on board." And I'm like, "Okay, what's the price tag?" I think it depends on the kind of work that people are doing. And it also depends on the mission, which I think becomes a challenge for the U.S. government because the U.S. government, every 4 years, a new president comes in and kind of defines why the government exists. And that can swing pretty far from one end to the other.
I think so, but I think for the average government worker, I don't think the work actually changes that dramatically, administration by administration. Now, I think the top, the whoever's in charge of the FBI and the FAA and all those appointed cabinet positions, I think at that top level it changes. But at the end of the day, the Space Launch System, SLS, I think that goes back to like Bush and Obama way back in their presidencies, and this stuff got put into motion. So we're still working on projects.
I'm not saying the work changes. I'm saying the why changes.
Yeah, I think to a degree. At the end of the day, I go back and forth because agencies have a purpose in a meeting, like they're constitutionally driven, like this is your mission, this is what you're here to do. When an agency is defined by Congress that this is your purpose, this is your container, your box, and it's very rigid, right?
Right.
Whereas Tesla, hey, we have this battery technology. Ooh, we can put them in big banks and we can store, energy on the power grid. So, we can prevent brownouts and micro outages in cities by putting the same batteries we put in our cars in these big battery packs in substations. if you're a federal agency, you have a distinct function and you don't veer from your lane because there's probably either another agency that exists or another agency that could exist.
Yeah, you've got a very narrow strike zone and a pretty narrow job description, which is what my experience was. The larger the organization, the more narrow the job description was, right? When you're employee number 5 in a startup, which I have been, there is no job description. It's like, man, just do what's got to get done. Go. So I would imagine an organization, I mean, that's got to be one of the largest employers on the planet, right? 2 point what million employees?
2.3 million. I think Walmart.
I think Walmart has that many employees.
Walmart's like 2.2 million.
It is now? Okay. All right. So
yeah,
I do think that one of the challenges is going to be the job descriptions for most federal roles are very, very well defined. And so if you start eliminating those roles, I think there can be a lot of unexpected consequences. So let's talk for a second about the federal employees. Like, what's this going to mean for them? That's 2.2 million people that have just been put on notice that their jobs are at risk.
I think you have 2.2 million people wondering to know what the fate of their income is.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you've got various level of people in all ends of the spectrum. The people that are probably close to retirement. I mean, again, think of this like a corporate layoff, right? The people that are close to retirement and getting their pensions, they might go ahead and age them into a retirement package and get those people out. That happens all the time. Yep. I think those that are young in the career or middle of the career, there's probably people that have, maybe have young children, or there's people on the other end of that spectrum that have, children that are, I shouldn't even call them children, young adults graduating and in college.
Right.
And I mean, here we are talking, going into the holiday season, the end of 2024 going to 25, and you probably got people that have seniors that are graduating and looking at college next year, and I don't know what my future of my employment looks like. I mean, that happens on the private sector, sure, day in, day out, but the whole thing behind, people getting a federal job is security. Most stable jobs on the planet is being a postal worker. I didn't say it's the greatest job, but the mail's got to run 24/7. What does it mean for what is my career outlook? I've been in governmental services for years. I haven't worked in corporate. I've maybe never worked for corporate in a corporate environment, a startup environment. Government is very structured. People don't transition well from structured government jobs to the small business world.
No, it is tough because in government jobs, the jobs are narrowly defined. There's standard operating procedures. It's a lot more about operating within the rule set and the bureaucracy. And in small businesses, there are no rules. There are no standard operating procedures. It's just like, figure it out. And if you've not come from a world where you have to figure things out, it is a very tough transition. I work with a couple of clients who are ex-military, and it's very disorienting for them for the first year or two because they're like, what do you mean there's not a process for how we do this? I'm like, there is no process for how we do that. Like, you're the first person to ever do that. What do you think we should do? And they're like, how am I the first person to do this? I'm like, because you're the first person to do this. And if you're coming from a military background or a government background, there's usually a documented process. Now, whether it's good or you follow it is a different conversation, but somebody's at least thought this through before. I think that's going to be one of the biggest challenges for government employees transitioning into the private sector is most organizations don't have good job descriptions, good standard operating procedures. If you are uncomfortable in a situation where there isn't a playbook, you might want to think about what it would take for you to keep your government job, because it's going to be real hard to walk into a role that doesn't have clear definition, clear boundaries, clear success criteria, clear standard operating procedures. If you are good at broken field running, if you are fine without a playbook and you're good at figuring things out on the fly, I think you're going to be successful anywhere. You should probably go test the market and see where you can find a role someplace else, assuming that the back to office mandate doesn't work well for you. If it works well for you, knock yourself out. Keep your job, do what you do, just add a commute there and back. But if that's a potential deal breaker for you, I would think about the kind of work that you're going into and recognize that very few organizations have the policies, procedures, and processes that the US government has. And if you need those to be successful, you're going to struggle in a lot of other places. But if they irritate you and you want to run free, you might love small business.
Well, let's break it down. Right, like that person that needs that policy and procedures, you need to go work in Fortune 500.
Yes.
If you're fearing for it, you want to jump ship, you want to just go ahead, then Fortune 500 operates very much like the government, and so it's probably an easy shift. And you're right. If you're a person that can't stand all the bureaucracy and policies and procedures, and you need more, then I think the small business or more private sector is a good fit. Now, let's go on the other side of that. If you are a business owner or executive and you're like, ooh, this person is like some policy and procedure person at the government, they know how to do this, and I'm going to bring them in to help clean up all of our stuff. No. No. Because
yes,
let me tell you,
there is a huge difference between building policies and procedures and following policies and procedures.
Well, I think there's a level of, even the government has policies and procedures for building policies and procedures. When you take, this person was responsible for documenting this whole legislative thing that we had to roll out for this agency or this component or however you want to phrase it, that person operated within a framework to build all that stuff. And if you're going to bring them into your business, that's still a level of chaos. They're not going to be able to, no, I shouldn't say they're not. There are, 80-20, right? 20% of the time they'll adapt and they'll do it. They'll be good. They'll be great at it. But if it was someone that just cranked out policy documentation and SOPs for the government, they're not going to be able to just walk into your business and make it happen just because they did it within the federal government or even large enterprise for that matter. Unless you have that framework or that person created that framework to do it, well, they're probably not going to work for you anyway. But that's the big difference. And I think it's on the flip side of that. Let's go to back to private industry. I'm going to make some assumptions here. I'm sure SpaceX has hired people that have worked in the federal side of the equation, bringing in people that have worked with the FAA in the past to help them manage the logistics and what they need to do to be proactive. There are opportunities to bring those people into the business that can bring that level of expertise that help you navigate the nuances of those agencies so that your business can be proactive. Just like how we pull military personnel after they leave the military and put them in leadership roles or strategic business roles, because they've been trained by one of the best leadership machines on the planet.
Absolutely.
So, but don't expect them to run a sales team when they've ran a SEAL team.
Very different things. Yes, that's good. Where are there opportunities? We've talked a little bit about the risks. Let's talk more about the risks and the opportunities. If the government heads down this path, which it seems like it is, right? Trump's gotten elected and seems like he and Elon Musk are buddies. Where are the opportunities? First one that comes to my mind is any business that wants to sell into the government should be on notice, on high alert, to find somebody currently in the organization they hope to sell into. There's going to be a huge opportunity to go pick off high potential people, high A players that are currently in, let's pick the Department of Defense, right? You go find that person, say, look, you can work from DFW. I just need you to help me sell into the Department of Defense. That's a massive opportunity.
I don't know if I would go that route at the moment, because the other component of DOGE is they're scrutinizing government contracts and stuff like that. So
okay,
there may be an opportunity there, but it may be a few more hurdles than it may be worth it for, at least in the short term. But I think go to opportunities. We have a growing economy. There's ups and downs, but again, we're going through these waves. There are jobs out there for anybody in the government that needs a job. There's some nuance in that. I mean, I hope this comes across correctly. If you're delivering the mail for the U.S. Postal Service, I'm pretty sure you're capable of delivering packages for UPS or FedEx or Amazon. That may not be what you want to do, but there are similar components. Now there are some
Yep.
unique things. I'm sure in some very highly specialized components, but like nuclear management and oversight.
Right.
But I'm pretty sure those are the government agencies that will probably get touched the least.
I do wonder if the Department of Government Efficiency ends up outsourcing more, right? To kind of challenge your thought. Like, sure, there's going to be more scrutiny on government contracts, but that doesn't mean they're going to spend less. It might mean they change how they spend.
I think what you're going to see is you're going to see a change in dynamic. I think SpaceX is one example that's changed the paradigm for government contracting. You look at the institutional companies like Boeing that just had these big open-ended contracts and would just, the more they could get out of the contract, the more they could squeeze out of it, the more profit they made versus, look at some of these SpaceX contracts, they're fixed price. Oh, here's how much it is to launch a rocket. Where Boeing was like, well, we think it's going to cost about $200 or $300 million, but we'll let you know the final bill when it actually happens. Oh, sorry, it was $1 billion. SpaceX says
we were only off by 4x.
Yeah. Now, I think the launch contracts the government's putting out now are more fixed bid prices, and I think the government has definitely switched to a more fixed bid model. And companies like Boeing are getting their lunch eaten. I mean, look at their space program at the moment. It's a joke. So I think employing some things like that across all of the government agencies, getting into these more fixed bid and set milestones. And it's already happening. It's not new. I think it's just, I don't know if we're 20% or 80%, but I don't know if I'd see more outsourcing, so to speak. I think you're going to see more strategic outsourcing. I think just taking, let's say, this is probably a bad example. If you take 45,000 IRS tax auditors and you make tax auditing a third party, service, you could probably get it more efficient, but then are you just going to end up with another way to try to screw the government like Medicare billing?
Right.
Which there's more, there's a big loophole right there. Fix the Medicare billing and you might fix some of the fraud.
We don't have time to talk about that. All right. Spillover effects. What might this Department of Government Efficiency policy mean for other industries, like second and third order effects? If this happens, what happens because this happens?
Oh, now you're asking to look into the crystal ball.
Yeah, absolutely. Crystal ball.
Go ahead.
I think more organizations move back away from the COVID. Actually, I think there's a bifurcation. I think some double down on remote and some go back to in-office. I think there's a split.
I think that's already happening. I think the problem with the government side is, I hate to use the quote from the Lorax, right? Unless somebody cares a whole awful lot, nothing's going to change. I think you've kind of got a person that cares a whole awful lot to drive change. Whether it's right change or wrong change is a different topic, but you have to have someone that cares a whole awful lot. And we all know there's bloat in the government. We know there's inefficiencies. We know there's bureaucracy. We know there's layers. Nobody has come in and just streamlined it like it's needed. I think the public and private sector, I think, is already battling this. I think the government's years behind schedule.
The other thing I wonder is, you think about second and third order effects, is it's like, let's say that they don't hit their 75% target. Let's say they hit 50% target. Half the people basically resign. But the half that resigns is the lower half of the talent pool. And so your best and your brightest go someplace else, and you're left with the B and C players. I wonder if 2 years from now, there's a massive opportunity for the A players to come back in and renegotiate a role for themselves based more on efficiency and effectiveness than tenure.
And I think this is where the average person probably doesn't call themselves an A player, but let's be real. An A quote unquote player is someone that shows up, does the work that is needed of them. They're good to their peers. They're collaborative with their boss, and they do a great job. That's an A player, right?
Right.
So I want to get away from the Michael Jordan before he got his act cleaned up.
There's no I in team, but there is it's the middle of win.
Yeah, exactly. I think what you're going to see is those people will get jobs in private public sector, Fortune 500 or small business. And I don't want to say I hope this happens. That's the wrong way to phrase it. I think what's going to force is efficiency through technology and evolution. I think there's a big lack of systematization and technology advancement at the government level that will force the change. It's easy to throw bodies at it right now because you know what? Hey, we're gonna make this thing, and I don't know, this is one that always gets me is like all of a sudden we're gonna hire 45,000 IRS tax auditors. Can't we use a technology system to do this stuff? Didn't we already invest in doing that? Can we make that better? Do we need 45,000 people to? Again, maybe that's a sore subject, but I think what you're going to find is you don't need to hire those 45,000. Well, you get into we're creating jobs, because if we hire those 45,000 people, we're paying them money. It goes back in the economy and the world goes round.
Yeah, kind of.
Well, that's the theory, but that's not how it actually works.
Well, that's the narrative, but the money that they're paying them is tax money. So you kind of pulled money out of one pocket and put it in the other and called it a job.
Well, we're paying payroll taxes, and those people are going to spend it in the economy, and it's going to make its way all the way back through. Yeah. You're paying 45,000 people and hoping, at the, what is that, $450 million if you're doing the average of $101,000 salary. Mm-hmm. So you're paying $450 million for those additional resources, hoping you're going to find that much in tax issues, which you probably can, but you're getting down to the nickel and diming component.
Right.
Whereas can we not hire 45,000 people and there you just saved $450 million in payroll?
Right. Or could you hire, consulting firm to do that in a year and get you onto a different platform?
Every tax return is now electronic. Can an algorithm now go through and find all the anomalies and automatically send notices?
All right. Crystal ball. Do you think they saved $2 trillion?
Not with this mandate back to the office. No. At best, you're going to save a couple billion.
Yeah, I'd give them 500 billion tops.
Well, from the employee standpoint, if you run the average there, it's $170 billion. So there's no way to say $500 million, because if you're cutting 75% of the workforce, it's only 1.7 or $175 billion.
That's just payroll tax or payroll expense. That's not
So total compensation. Call it 225, 250. $250 billion. You still got $1.75 trillion to go. That's got to come from somewhere else. And that's probably going to come more from government contracting than anything. I mean, we're paying $2 trillion for the F-35. Not that I'm against spending money on military equipment, but
he does live in Texas, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, and I'm probably going to misquote this here. If I remember right, government or military spending isn't even the big line item. It's actually the healthcare and Social Security side are the biggest ones, which again, that's a topic we're not going to talk about. We're here to talk about why work sucks, not Social Security.
Right. Does the government continue to function, or do they lose all their good people?
I'm going to break it into thirds.
Okay.
You're going to lose a third of your good people.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to retain a third of your good people, and you're going to retain a third of the people you're trying to get rid of. 1/3 of your top talent gone. That's going to have an impact. Yep. And you're going to retain a third of the people you were probably trying to get rid of.
You were hoping to get rid of.
And the real question is, what happens to the 1/3 that stayed and are the good people? Now they've lost their mentors, their leaders, their peers that are helping them. And they're left with the people that are piling on more work, less efficient, not helping out, not a good peer. And the real question is, what's going to happen when that happens? Because then you'll lose your second wave of good people.
Yeah, that's a great point. People who are in the government, people who sell into the government, people who've been in the government. Like, I'm curious as to what their take is of DOGE and what it's going to mean for the government and really for the broader economy over the next couple of years.
Definitely interested in that. I would say I would take that a little bit further and say, I'm really curious, if you work for the government, what are your concerns? Are you for this or are you against it? Mm-hmm. What are your fears and what is your plans? If this is going to happen, what's your plan of attack? We'd love to hear it.
Yeah. And I'd love to hear them look into their crystal ball. What do they think is going to happen over the next year, 2 years, 4 years? if the Department of Government Efficiency does what it says it's going to do, what are the consequences that maybe those of us outside the government don't have visibility to, but those inside might understand?
Could this be a turning point for how work is done in the federal government? And maybe even if in your own industry, will DOGE bold moves lead to government of the future or push out the best workers? Let us know what you think.
I'm going to go with both. I'm going to say that it will usher in the government of the future, but it is going to be ugly between here and there. I think the government loses a lot of talent. The people that remain don't have the bandwidth or skill sets to handle the responsibilities. So they end up needing to outsource more and form partnerships with private companies, which I think is a good thing for the government in the long run, but going to be really painful and bumpy along the way. That's my crystal ball.
I'm with you. So will DOGE bold moves lead to government of the future or just push out our best workers?
Yes, and yes.
Yes, and yes. And then I believe next time we're going to be talking about controversial workplace strategies and their surprising results. So tune in on the next episode for controversial workplace strategies and surprising results.
Make Work Not Suck, our podcast that talks about exactly that. Our process, vision, journey, culture, and results. We present real-world business solutions that make the difference. Our goal is to make work not suck. Hosted by Ryan Hodges, co-host Daniel Steer. Join us each episode and make work not suck.